Imagine for a moment that your dream of owning your own business is about to come true. All you have left to do is close on your small business loan. You show up to your closing with all your required paperwork. You hand it over to the loan officer, who begins going through and checking items off of his list. Then he stops. He looks at your insurance policy, and he looks at you, and he delivers the bad news that he is not going to be able to provide the financing for your business because your policy does not have coverage for acts of terrorism. Your heart drops as you begin to feel your dream of owning your own business slip through your fingers. And this may seem dramatic, but this is actually a very real scenario that business owners can face if they don't have the required coverage. Hello, my name is Christina Sills, and I'm a licensed insurance professional that specializes in insurance needs of small business owners. And I'm here today to talk to you about a very important and often overlooked coverage: terrorism coverage. Research has shown that terrorism coverage benefits small business owners because it helps them in obtaining financing and it protects their business assets. So let's examine the first piece of that statement, and let's look at the relationship between obtaining financing and why coverage for terrorism would be required. Terrorism coverage is a requirement of most small business owners. Terrorism coverage is a requirement of most financial institutions. Imagine for a moment that your dream of owning your own business is about to come true. All you have left to do is close on your small business loan. You show up to your closing with all your required paperwork. You hand it over to your loan officer, who begins checking items off of his list. And then he stops, and he looks at your insurance policy, and he looks at you, and he delivers the bad news that they're not going to be able to provide the financing for your business because your policy does not provide coverage for acts of terrorism. Your heart drops, and you feel that dream of owning your own business begin to slip through your fingers. Now, this may seem dramatic, but this is actually a very real scenario for small business owners if they don't have the required coverage of terrorism. Hello, my name is Christina Sills, and I'm a licensed insurance professional that specializes in the insurance needs of small business owners. And I'm here today to talk to you about a very important and often overlooked type of coverage: terrorism coverage. Now, research has shown that terrorism coverage benefits small business owners because it helps them in obtaining financing and it protects their business assets. Let's examine the first piece of that statement, and let's explore the relationship between obtaining financing and terrorism coverage. Terrorism coverage is a requirement of most financial institutions, specifically government-backed financial institutions, such as Small Business Administration and Fannie Mae. An article entitled "An Empirical Analysis of the Economic Impact of Federal Terrorism Reinsurance" that was published in the Journal of Monetary Economics in March 2004, written by J.R. Brown and his co-authors, noted that after 9/11 occurred, President Bush attributed billions of dollars of canceled or postponed construction projects, downgraded financial ratings for mortgage-backed securities, and other severe economic consequences to the inability of businesses to secure insurance against terrorism risk. In fact, in the 14 months following the attacks, over $15 billion in real estate transactions were either stalled or even canceled due to a lack of terrorism insurance. Let's look at another example of this requirement. In this graph, we see the results of a survey by Mortgage Bankers Association that was referenced in a 2005 article published in Regulation, and it was called "Terrorism Insurance 2005" by Howard Kunther, Erwin Mikhail-Kurjan, which concluded that of $656 billion in commercial and multifamily loans issued, 95% of those loans required proof of terrorism coverage. Now, these requirements are really no different than other catastrophic losses such as wind, earthquake, flood, things like that. However, the big difference between those catastrophic losses. And terrorism loss is that terrorism is not location specific. You're not only going to be required to have coverage because you're in an area that's prone to terrorist attacks. We don't know when another attack is going to occur, and we don't know who's going to be the target of that attack. It could be anyone, and we don't yet possess tools sophisticated enough to predict those attacks. Bottom line is, investors want to make sure that their investment in your business is going to be secure. So at this point, you probably understand why you're going to be required to have coverage, but let's examine the financial instability benefits that coverage can provide. To do that, first we're going to look at losses from 9/11. In the November 2006 paper entitled Transition and Terrorism Insurance, the debate over TRIA, Ann Lane Ferrara and Daniel Garcia Schwartz showed insured losses to be just over $30 billion. Now again, those are just losses that were paid out by an insurance company. When all the numbers were added up and all was said and done, there was actually over $90 billion in damages and losses. That's approximately a $60 billion difference, which, as you can imagine, for a small business owner, if you have any sort of gap in coverage like that, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to recover after a severe loss. Now, you're probably also wondering why these numbers are so high. Well, business owners are exposed to a lot more areas of loss, and so thus the loss totals are going to be a lot higher. So let's take a look at some of those exposure areas. The first one is going to be property, both real property, so a building that you own and either lease out or occupy, and then your personal property, the items that you use every day to make your business run. Next, you have business income. Now, this is a loss where you are losing revenue because your business has sustained, an attack or a fire or something like that, and you're not able to operate. Business income coverage is going to provide you with the ability to pay your bills and pay your employees and get your business back up and running. And finally, you have workers' compensation coverage. Now, if your employee is injured on the job, even if you had nothing to do with the reason that they were injured, you're still going to be required to help them get back up and running. And as a responsible business owner, you're of course going to want to get your employee back up to work and get all their medical bills paid for them if they were in fact injured on the job. With so many different types of financial exposures, it's easy to see why one act of terror could cripple or potentially ruin a small business to the point that they're not going to be able to recover. Now, as my time with you today comes to an end, I'd like to leave you with a few key points to remember. The first being, terrorism coverage is a requirement for most small business owners to obtain financing. And again, that's regardless of your geographical location. Even if you think you're nowhere near a target, it doesn't mean you're not going to be required to have coverage. And finally, and probably most importantly, terrorism coverage provides financial security to your business. It will aid your business in recovery efforts, and it will ensure that your business is secure and that your employees are protected. So next time you sit down with your insurance agent and you're discussing what coverages you would like to have for your business, think about all the work and sacrifices that you've made to make your dream become a reality. Could you rebuild all of that on your own? Or imagine yourself sitting at that bank waiting for your loan to close, and you find out that your financing isn't approved. Could you handle feeling your dream slip through your fingers like that? Now, these are not scenarios that any business owner ever wants to find themselves in. So I have confidence that each of you will choose to protect your business and make sure that your insurance policy provides coverage for acts of terrorism. Thank you all for your time today.